Welcome back, sewists. If you're new to my channel, I'm Stacy and I've been teaching sewing for over 30 years. I got my degree from Oklahoma State University back when they still had home economics. Then it was human environmental sciences, and I'm not sure what it's called now, but my major was fashion design and manufacturing. And I love teaching. I taught mostly junior high and high school students for most of my life, but I did have quite a few years of adult teaching too. And I love to share what I've learned with you, and I always learn something new because down in the comments we have a lot of experienced sewists who leave great tips. So always feel free to read down in the comments and see what great information you might glean from other sewists who come by this channel. Let me show you what we're working on today. We're going to be doing something for men. We have a lot of men sewists or people who sew for men or who just like the menswear designs. So we're going to pick another one today to share with you. This is by Wardrobe. It's a PDF pattern. It's called the Tropical Shirt, what we used to call a camp shirt. Back when I first started teaching, I remember doing quite a few classes on a shirt very similar to this. Nice and casual. Let me show you the fabric though. I'm going to combine these two fabrics. These are a ducking, so they're a heavier fabric, which is nice because we're going into fall. You can throw another shirt under it. You can wear it open. These are the two fabrics. What I'm planning to do is make it mostly in the black. I have more of the black than I do of the ivory. I'm going to have an ivory front, and then it has a yoke in the back, and I'm going to cut the yoke out of the ivory on the bias. And then I'll probably do a bias cut black pocket for the front. I haven't 100% decided, but I'm kind of thinking that's the direction I'm going to go. So it'll mostly be black with a few little white accents. My hope is to match the plaid. This is sort of like a window pane check almost. And I want to match it across the front, even though it's going to be two different fabrics. All right, I have these vintage buttons in my collection that I think I'm going to use. I think they're a little on the big side, but I think they'll actually look really cute. My biggest quandary I'm having right now is what to serge this in. I was going to serge it all in black, and I think I'm going to, even on these parts, just use the black thread instead of switching my thread colors back and forth. I think I'll just do the whole thing in black, and then I'll switch it for top stitching. However, I don't want to top stitch it, I don't think, in black on the ivory parts. All right, let's get cutting out. I've already traced off my pattern. There's all my pieces. I just have to really pay attention that I don't cut the wrong thing from the wrong fabric. Let's do a quick fit check. I'm wearing my favorite little raglan tee top. I've made this on the channel before, and I'll put a link down below if you want to sew it with me. The title card will have a shirt like this that's shorter sleeved, blue with daisies on it. Very fast sew. I have made 5 of these shirts, and I actually am getting ready to make it into a dress. I have the fabric already picked out. Also have my basket to keep all my parts in. My buttons in my pattern are already down in there. And we're going to start with interfacing. The pieces that need interfaced are the upper collar, the pocket has a little interfacing, and then we have our front facings. The under collar, it has 2 different pieces, so you have an upper and under collar. The under collar is actually cut in 2 pieces and sewn together on the center back line on the bias. I'm working on a video all about grain line, which hopefully will come out next week if I get my act together, because I'm also traveling and have other things going on. So if I can get it together, I will have a grain line video. One thing I appreciate about this is it actually shows pieces that you could switch from straight of grain to bias and it would be fine, which is what I'm going to be talking about soon with all of you, so you can see how you can manipulate your pattern to get that look or hang or drape that you really want. So I'm just going to cut my 3 pieces that need to be cut out of interfacing first, and then I can just throw them in my basket and move on. The collar has to be cut on the fold, or you can trace off a long one if you want to. We need 2 of our front facings, and we just need 1 little pocket facing, which is great. If you keep your scraps of interfacing like I do, I probably have a scrap that I can use of that. And I keep all my little scraps. I have a bin This is something my sister taught me, who was one of my sewing teachers. She kept a shoebox full of her scraps, and it was a wise thing to do. And I learned that from her. All right, I needed pins and pattern weights. I'm just going to use a couple pattern weights for this. All right, so there's that interfacing, but I'm going to hang on to my pattern piece because I have to cut it in the fashion fabric in a minute. And now we're ready to start laying out our fabrics. And I am going to line up my black and my white fabric on top of each other. Let me just say that I have pre-shrunk this. So I have serged the edge, thrown them in the washing machine with a little soap and a couple towels, washed them and dried them like I expect the garment to be treated after it is worn, so that we do not have any issues with it. And then I'm going to lay these, so I'm going to lay these right sides together, and I'm going to match up my window pane check. So I am looking at my, it's not perfect size. The black window pane is a little bit larger than the white, but it's pretty stinking close. So I'm going to get as close as I can. And if I can't get it perfectly on top of each other, my biggest goal is to keep the stripe going across, lined up, so that, yeah, they're not the same, but they're so close, but not quite. Okay, so now I have to rethink. And they're off. Okay, I'm going to give you a little close-up so you can see how far off they are. And now I just have to decide how I want that to look, because the checks are not going to line up. I just assumed they would be the same, and I assumed wrong. So here's my dilemma. If I line up, see, I have this one line lined up across, but you can see this space is bigger than this space. They're just woven differently, sadly. So there is no way to get these to line up going across. Even if I shifted it, it still doesn't work. They just will not line up. So if this was the front of the shirt, how upsetting is that for them to be off? It actually looks better in the camera than it does in person. It bothers me a lot in person. Like, I would be tempted to shift one to the bias, but I know it won't hang right. On the yoke, it's fine because it's faced. On this, it's not. I would not feel comfortable doing that. So I think I'm just going to let it be how it is and let them be off. Because I really want them, the person I'm making this for really wanted it color blocked so that they had part white, part, and I don't want like the whole front black. So what I have done, here is my front. I have got one layer of black and one layer of white or ivory, and I'm just laying it out, making sure it's on grain, but not worrying too much about those lines matching up because I can't match them up. I've also laid out next to it, I've laid out next to it the facing, so that when it's faced, the black side will have a black facing, the white side will have a white facing. And I want to do a sleeve of each color. So here's what I'm thinking. Do I want it to be pretty much just white on one side and black on the other, or do I want to switch the sleeves? And I think I want to switch the sleeves. So in order to do that, right now, if I cut it with the pattern facing up, what would happen is it would match side to side. But if I flip my pattern over, it's going to switch which side the sleeve can go in, because it switches my front to my back. So I'm going to actually switch my pattern over on that, and we're good to go. The yoke, I want to cut on the bias for the white, and then I'm going to cut it on grain of white, so that the bias doesn't stretch or get out of whack when it's sewn on. So I'm going to do a white yoke, so I'm going to wait to cut that, and I'm also going to wait to cut the back because it needs to be cut on the fold. I have a whole nother piece of fabric, which honestly I don't know that I'm going to need, but I kept it just in case. And then I've got my pocket. I just need one of those, one collar, one under, or two under collar, but cut on the bias. So I'm only going to cut these three pieces for now. Then I will refold and look at it and decide. I probably will refold, get my back out. Then I will refold my white, or whatever I need to do to get the pieces for white. I think everything's going to be cut flat on the white. And then I have a whole other piece of black, which I probably will need because I'm getting the sleeve out of this to cut my back out of. And then whatever's left over, this makes the greatest napkins and tea towels. And I have been just using all my scraps up when I've used this ducking to make kitchen cloths. I've made a few already for my kitchen out of the green and ivory that I made a dress out of a while back. I just love it. It's the greatest fabric for that. Let's get these cut out and refolded. Now, I have this little black corner up here, so I want to put the pocket white side, so I'm going to cut a black pocket on the bias, and I'm just looking to see how it lines up. And this pattern has the bias on there for you, thinking that you might want to do that. It's a pretty common fashion thing on shirts to turn the collar, the cuffs, and the yokes on the bias, especially when working with plaid. Look at how cute that's going to look. Now we need a yoke on the bias and a yoke on the straight, and it has the lines for us, so I can actually easily line this up to get the direction that I need. So I'm going to cut one on the bias and I'm going to cut the other on the straight of grain, and that just gives it more stability. So the garment is actually relying on the stability of the one straight on the straight of grain, and the rest is really just for cute and fashion. Now, do I want a black collar or a white collar? I think I want a black collar because collars show dirt. They just, you know how you get the ring around the collar thing, and if it's cut out of black, it doesn't show. So I think I'm going to save both my collar pieces, so these will be cut out of black. I'm going to cut these last two out of this, one on the bias, one on the straight of grain. And I could do cross grain or lengthwise grain for this. It's going to be on the inside, this particular, the one that's straight, that yoke. And then look at all of this I have left. Lots left for kitchen towels. I'm looking to see it does not shadow through. That was my biggest concern, was that the black might shadow through, but it does not. And I want to make sure that I keep my grain line straight. So I am looking at my pattern, making sure that the plaid is lined up. And I have to move away from the selvage to do it because it away from the selvage, which is why we never want our selvage in our garment. We always want to cut so that the selvage is left on the cutting table. I'm going to worry about it, especially since the front we know can't match where the ivory is. The undercollar, I need two on the bias for the undercollar and one on the fold for the upper collar. Okay, so upper collar. And you could go cross grain or lengthwise grain for this. Falls, I'm looking at the design of the plaid because that's what's going to show. Now we get two of these on the bias. And then it has the bias grain line for me, so I can lay this right down on that bias grain line and just cut. There's two of the undercollar and there will be a seam, and they have us cutting it this way because it makes, this is a tailoring technique from men's shirting and suit making, that bias cut undercollar with a seam in the back causes the shape to fall perfectly. If you cut it as one piece on bias, it still will fall nicely, but you really, having it meet and having the bias, it actually is sort of like my hands, and it makes it drape and fall really nicely. All cut out. We're ready to head over and press on our interfacing, so that's what I'm going to do next. We're going to fuse all of our interfacing pieces, and then we'll be ready to sew. So I'll meet you over at the ironing board and the sewing machine. All right, we're going to, this is the wrong side of the fabric. It's very hard to tell on this fabric. They're very close. And I'm doing the top of the pocket, the little pocket interfacing, and then here is my collar, my upper collar, again on the wrong side, so I'm going to just use that. I have my silicone mat down so I don't fuse anything to my interfacing. And if I need to, I can put another one on top, which I might. It just keeps it from also fusing anything to my iron. Keeps everything nice and tidy. So I'm going to press this on. When you do interfacing, you press down, you don't rub it around. That keeps the glue from getting squished and moved, and it will make it stay on a little bit better. Moving on to my facings, I've got a black one and a white one. I'm going to do the same thing, just press it on from the wrong side. You can see this is the side with the glue going down to the wrong side of the fabric. If you're having issues with your interfacing not sticking, which is normal, interfacing is temporary. It's only supposed to stick long enough for you to get it sewn on. The stitching is what's supposed to permanently hold your interfacing in place. So if you're having issues with that, one of the things you can do is once you press it, not to move it right away. Let it cool before you move your piece that you've interfaced. That will actually help it stay stuck a little longer. Now that we're all interfaced, I'm going to do some more prep work at the serger. If you don't have an overlock, you can zigzag your edges, you can turn under and stitch, but it's important to have some sort of seam finish so that your garment does not fall apart once you start washing it. So I'm going to take my pocket and I'm going to serge across the top first, and then I'm going to fold it this direction so that you can see where the hem for the pocket is, and I'm going to serge around the outer edge. That's going to completely finish off the interior of the pocket so I won't have any little frays. And then when I flip it around, it's already finished off the inner edge. I'll show you, but let me go ahead and serge the top first. So it's overlocked. Now I'm going to fold it down, and I'm going to serge around the outer edge. Don't have to worry about the top because it's going to be the hem. So let me serge around that real quick. All those little hairs, I'm going to give it a quick haircut. Get rid of those threads. Okay, now I'm going to flip this around, and it has finished off that top of the pocket. Now I'm ready to press under all of those seam allowances, and it just is a fast and easy way to get that hem started. So I can press, now my pocket's ready to get pressed, all the seam allowance pressed back, and I can top stitch down this hem, and our pocket's ready to be applied to the front. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and take both of my facings, and I'm going to serge this outer edge, and I'm not going to worry about the hem because the hem's going to get caught. So I really just need this outer edge. Actually, I'm trying to remember, I think this might get caught up in the facing too. I'm going to only worry about the outer edge, but let me check my directions real quick. I have been educated. So we are going to do this edge and this edge for both facings. Okay, so there's one. Now this one, I am going to go ahead and serge it in black. If you want to, you could definitely switch your threads back and forth, but I'm going to just stick with black, make it easy. So now we've prepped our stuff. As I'm looking at their directions, as they tell us our seam allowance, which is 3/8 or 10 millimeter. And then it shows what's wrong side and right side. Wrong side is always the dark gray, right side is going to be white. We've interfaced. Okay friends, we're going to stop here for this week. Come back next week for the sewing portion. I decided to turn this into 2 videos because I had almost 3 hours of sewing video to edit down, and I didn't want it to get too long. See you next week for another fun video.